Welcome back. You're watching Commodity Champions, and we are in conversation with Vandita Pant, Chief Commercial Officer at the BHP Group. Vandita, a lot of conversation also has been around hydrogen, whether it's green hydrogen, grey and blue hydrogen. The cost doesn't work really, and in the meanwhile, it really seems to be making a rainbow out of itself.
Yeah, there's a bit of a rainbow going on in hydrogen, isn't it? All colors. But if I were to ground the discussion in terms of what will be feasible over what periods of time, the way we think about hydrogen, Manisha, is that hydrogen will have a space and place absolutely as an energy source, but more potentially for industrial hubs, which can use hydrogen, can do it in a closed loop manner. It will require, in long term, for a green hydrogen scenario, to have lots of ample renewable energy and cheap renewable energy. The economics of hydrogen is not easy to work through, especially if you take the full value chain aspect of it. But I do see the role of hydrogen in industrial activities. For example, in decarbonizing, potentially some part of it in steel, some part of it in industrial complexes, on hydrocarbons, on cement. But as a source of overall energy, we think, and most people kind of agree, that hydrogen will be a smaller part of the energy mix going forward. And the economics really needs to work, which it doesn't as of now, both because of how the scale of renewable needs to be for supporting hydrogen, but equally the cost of electrolyzer. Last point, which not many people think about, is the land use footprint needed for hydrogen to be done at scale. If hydrogen needs to be done at scale, the kind of renewable you need, the usage of land is massive. So it requires a change in not just energy, but also in land use. And of course, hydrogen as an energy source requires energy by itself. So there is some depletion and yield loss which happens as you get into it. Still exciting, but long term we'll have to solve for both the cost and the land use for it to be viable for industrial production.
All right, got that. I also want to jump on to the macro picture now, and China, of course, is important. When you talk commodities, mining, metals, you have to talk about China. And here, the recovery at best has been patchy. China on one side and the rest of the world on the other side, which is also dealing with rate hikes, inflation, unemployment numbers, etc. How do you look at the minerals and metal demand in light of this?
Yeah, lots going on in the world for sure, and quite a few uncertain vectors as well right now. So on China, I think fair to say the Chinese first half, actually second quarter has been patchy, but first quarter of this year was super strong, was very strong. Second quarter has been patchy, and I would say we have to dig a bit deeper to look at which sectors led to that patchiness. And the weakness from our perspective has been very much on housing starts, which is one of the main demand triggers for steel. So housing starts been quite weak. But if I were to look at infrastructure, especially green infrastructure, that's been quite positive. In fact, houses completion, which are very copper intensive in terms of activity, have been strong as well. Exports been weak, but machinery a bit neutral. So if I were to put all of that together, we still think that H2 second half of this year could be quite positive, but requires very targeted and systematic policy interventions around stimulus. Of course, China has almost no inflation, and toolkit from a policy perspective is available. So something to watch and to see whether that takes off in second half or early next year. If I were to come to the rest of the world, you are absolutely right. The interest rate trajectory on one end and unemployment data, which continues to be quite positive actually, at another end, and the way in which consumption has continued to be strong makes the job of Fed slightly difficult on where to land. But overall, U.S. Growth weaker this year than last year, but we do not think right now recession is a scenario which is our central scenario. If I were to go a bit on Europe side, it's a difficult. It continues to be a difficult year. Investment is subdued and will continue to be, given the way the inflation's playing out in that market, and equally the behavior of consumers there is more conservative. So as uncertainty comes in, consumption as a driver also weakens. So I would say weak Europe, US, not recessionary, but one to watch. China can be on the upswing, but requires some policy. And of course, as you know, bright spot remains India with investment, infrastructure from a government perspective and budget allocation perspective, as well as private investment and demand from real estate, from infrastructure, from manufacturing, continuing to make it a really positive story.
All right. That's about the global markets. But the excitement also is with your tie-up with Microsoft. I mean, you're onboarding artificial intelligence and blockchain in your operations for efficiency. Is there any work that has been done until now? How is it proceeding? Are you looking to, weave it through your operations more going forward?
Very exciting, Manisha, and I think we're just about starting to scratch the surface of what machine learning and artificial intelligence can do, both in terms of productivity and efficiency part of the operations, but equally in terms of solving some really wicked problems that we have around value chains and supply chains. To give you an example, you mentioned blockchain. BHP has done a lot of work. My teams worked with our customers to look at the challenges of provenance. Where do commodities get produced? How do we make sure that that's actually the case, so that the footprint of human rights, water usage, etc. can be understood? But secondly, how do we make sure that through the supply chain, from mining all the way to the car that gets produced, we know how much carbon emission has been used to produce that car? And to give you a few examples, we did a pilot with Tesla where through blockchain, we traced nickel that we produce in our Western Australian operations, which is the world's second largest nickel sulfide resource, all the way through blockchain to their gigafactory. And the idea was so that we can see how much of our nickel goes through all the intermediaries and reaches Tesla in the gigafactory. To give you another example, with one of our customers in the US, Southwire, we traced carbon footprint of our Chilean copper all the way to the US factory of theirs, which is a wire rod manufacturer, and through that had the footprint of copper, and through our offset capabilities, offset it in such a way so that it became the first carbon neutral copper transaction in the world. And I think, as I mentioned, Manisha, these applications are going to be really solutions for some of the things that we are looking at, which is both provenance as well as carbon emission accounting, but on the other hand, really looking at productivity and efficiency in our operations too.
Okay, fair point. That and quite exciting. Look forward to that. But final question before we let you go, and this is about the gender balance, and that's something that most companies and institutions are looking at. And we do understand that at BHP, it's a great number, great ratio. What are you looking to achieve? What is the efficiency right now?
Yeah, Manisha, this is a topic close to my heart. And just to give you my perspective on it, in 2017 in BHP, we were 17% odd women in the whole company across the globe. And we set an aspiration target to be gender balanced by 2025. Here we are. in 23, and I'm very proud to say that we have doubled that percentage in BHP. Now we are 35% women, and this is across all the ranks, operations as well as corporate offices. And this huge shift which has been done with very deliberate actions. This requires a real focus of where do we hire from, how do we train people, how do we make the culture truly inclusive.
All right, so that is Vandita Pant talking everything about from metals to commodities to coal, steel, and of course gender parity as well, where BHP has attained 35% and looking to attain 50% of gender parity by 2025. Vandita Pant, it has been a pleasure talking to you at CNBC TV18. Thank you so much for joining in. That's all that we have on Commodity Champions. Thank you for watching.